Hello and welcome to Vikram Loves to Freelance. Now, in this video, I'm essentially picking up the topic of long-term relationship with freelance clients with regard to their relevance in the long term, whether they are actually relevant and useful for you or not. My perspective on this particular issue is that you, as a savvy freelancer, must always take a call, always evaluate any relationship on a long term basis with freelance clients. Don't take long term relationships for granted. Trust me, I am speaking out of my own experience that when it comes to freelance, relationships with freelance clients, long term relationships can work either way. They can actually be good, they can actually be bad as well, and this is something a lot of freelancers don't realize. I'll specify how it works out negatively, because what happens is once a particular freelance client has say worked with you, had a good experience, but you charged fairly low, or that's a client who always pays very low. Now, is that a client whom you really want to work with? Maybe you had otherwise a very good experience. The interaction was very good. The client is very friendly. The client doesn't interfere with what you're doing, how you're doing, pays promptly, etc. But if the revenue generated versus the time and effort expended is not really commensurate, then you really need to take a call. And see, when I look back on my freelancing career, what I see is that yes, I've had some fantastic freelance clients on a long term basis who've actually generated substantial income for me. Like for instance, my biggest client on Elance in terms of revenue generation has been one from Australia. A wonderful client, completely, and we started off with just an $80 project, and we went on to about $4,000 plus. In writing and translation, trust me, that's a good amount of money, and especially with when you're dealing with one particular client. So, and I never thought that relationship would extend, so much. So that was a wonderful experience that I had. But at the same time, I had, say, an Indian client. I remember an Israeli client. I had long term relationships with them, say about 3,000, 1,500, $2,000, that kind of range over a an extended period. See, first of all, that's not a lot of money. Second, the time and effort which I spent on those projects was not entirely commensurate. See, I agree that when you freelance, there's a trade off that you might, if you give up on these clients, you might have nothing at all. But when you have, say, a regular stream of work coming in, you really need to take a call in terms of whether I should continue long term, working on a long term basis with these particular clients versus looking at new clients who are actually paying me better in spite of my having to spend less time and effort on those projects. If that is the case, trust me, you please look at probably thank you very much to your these long term clients and moving on to these newer clients. But if the client is really good in every possible way, and it's pays promptly and pays well commensurate to the time and effort which you're spending, then definitely that's a client whom you want to stick on. The point of my video is that take a call. I've seen a lot of freelancers who just get swayed by the fact that, oh, I have this long term relationship with this client, and I'm so happy. I've actually I'm just gonna blindly work with this client no matter what. Like I had an Israeli client. I worked pretty long term, I would say, almost about 8 months or so, and they were definitely looking at a much longer relationship. But I eventually, stopped responding, and I just in effectively I fired that client because you know I don't want to spend so much time and effort. I know from the very beginning they haggled a lot. Eventually they their budget was always very low, and that's not something which you want. You want to spend the least possible time and effort, within which, as long as quality is not being compromised, you want to be paid for that time and effort that you're spending. If that's not happening with a particular client, trust me, move on. Don't have this I love you kind of a relationship with freelance clients. Nobody's you're not bound to them, you're not wedded to them. It's all on a need based basis. you have a requirement which is being fulfilled, remember that there are, just as there are a lot of fish in the sea, there are a lot of freelance clients out there. One goes, there might be 10 who can actually come in. That one which you're pleasing to, sky's limit, sort of, I'm whatever it is, I'm going to please him or her. That one may take away 10 different clients who could easily come in through the window. So don't do that. So evaluate your client relationships. I'm not saying don't have long term relationships with freelance clients, but evaluate, and that evaluation has to take place all the time. I'm saying this out of my experience. Trust me, this is advice which will prove very useful to you. Cheers.